Hello, and thank you for watching another edition of ARFCOM News. This week I want to tell you about a pretty face who personifies the Dunning-Kruger effect, a lawsuit the ATF actually wants to lose, and the Texas company suing New Jersey's Attorney General. But first, I want to tell you about the wholesome, non-GMO, sustainably sourced, gluten-free, zero-trans-fat, low-carb night vision products offered to you by our friends at TNVC.com, just like Mom used to make. If you like seeing stuff more than not seeing stuff, take a look at our sponsor, TNVC.com, your source for quality night vision gear to make you the bump in the night. Everyone knows the Miss USA pageant has a reputation for showcasing thoughtful intellectuals and insightful commentary on constitutional law. Totally not empty-headed thoughts willing to issue an opinion on any subject regardless of their complete lack of knowledge and inability to think critically, which is why I was surprised to hear the newest Miss USA shot her mouth off with a babbling and incoherent, inconsistent rant about guns. The deceptively named Assia Branch, who, as it turns out, is not particularly thick at all, comes from Mississippi and seems to have never read the Bill of Rights because she apparently thinks the Second Amendment has something to do with hunting. Branch said, "Where I'm from, there are a lot of guns. People like to hunt, and I think it's important that we not ban guns because obviously people will find a way to get what they want anyway, but I think it's our Second Amendment right." Okay, so far, that's fairly common FUD nonsense, ignorant, but in a typical and ordinary kind of way. Let's be honest, most folks are not exactly constitutional scholars, let alone people who make a living by looking good in a swimsuit. But Branch went on to say, "I think AK-47s and other guns along those lines should be left to our military. There's no reason for civilians to have those types of weapons." And that's where we're gonna have a problem, sugar britches. There's about 10 gallons of stupid in that 5-gallon statement, so I'm not going to get off into the weeds about how she's too stupid to realize our military doesn't issue Kalashnikov pattern rifles because they are commie trash. The real meat of her stupid, though, is this idea that civilians shouldn't have military arms. It's not her fault she doesn't know the purpose of the Second Amendment was to guarantee generations of Americans would have force parity with military troops because our ancestors had just finished a desperate fight against the best equipped military on the planet, and private ownership of arms played a pivotal role in the success of the revolution. It's not her fault she doesn't know how General Gage's attempt to deny powder and ball to the colonists was the match that lit the revolutionary fire. It's not her fault she's never read any of the papers in which the founders lay out the clear and compelling reasons that civilian ownership of military arms is the foundation on which our republic is laid. It isn't even her fault she has no idea what the Dunning-Kruger effect is. The most tragic thing about ignorance and stupidity is you don't know you have it, and she's got a lot of it. But don't be too hard on her. She also took the bold and courageous position that people should not harm each other with guns. Branch said, "Go hunting, go shoot targets, use it as more of a sport. Let's not harm each other." So brave. Now, before we move on to the next story, I want to address the handful of folks who will inevitably cast me as misogynist for my derisive comments about this thought. It's not that females, or even attractive females, are dumb, but people who make a living on their appearance or other superficial factors do tend to be dumber, regardless of their gender. When you have a face and a body like mine, you had better be smart or funny to get by. But when you are attractive, you never really have to work as hard as normal people. I was every bit as derisive and condescending in my analysis of Dave Bautista's dumbass comments a couple of weeks back, so miss me with that sexist nonsense. I'm just a generally disagreeable kind of guy. What would happen if a defendant in a lawsuit wasn't really interested in defending against the suit? The cities of Syracuse, San Jose, Chicago, and Columbia have leveraged the resources of oligarch Michael Bloomberg through his organization Everytown to sue the BATFE over their interpretation of what the statutory definition of what a firearm is. Basically, this comes down to 80% lowers, frames, etc. The ATF has been uncharacteristically clear on what they consider to be a firearm, so anything short of that is not a gun. But authoritarian control freaks don't like this clarity. They want vaguely gun-shaped objects and billets of aluminum or steel to be considered a gun whenever convenient. Of course, the BATFE would like nothing more than to be able to shoot dags and put people in cages over nebulous and ambiguous ideas of when a chunk of metal becomes an evil gun. So if they don't even want to fight the suit against them, what can we do? That's where the Firearms Policy Coalition comes in. On the 12th of this month, they filed a motion to intervene in the case on behalf of industry partners who are likely to be adversely affected by the ruling. This will allow our side to have a say in the proceedings. In a sense, it would be almost as if the FPC is defending the ATF in court, although that's not technically accurate. Who would have thought that was possible? FPC's Director of Legal Strategy, Adam Kraut, said, "The ATF and DOJ will not adequately represent the interests of FPC and our law-abiding members and supporters across the country. For decades, the ATF has enforced a bright-line delineation as to when an object becomes a firearm under the Gun Control Act. If you think the ATF deserves a robust defense against these authoritarian control freaks and would like to help the FPC win this court battle, please go to firearmspolicy.org and give generously." Maryland has joined the list of states who will have to defend their draconian and unconstitutional carry laws in court. In previous episodes, we told you about the suits filed by the Firearms Policy Coalition and the Second Amendment Foundation against New Jersey and New York. This week, I have the pleasure of telling you about the same against Maryland. It is unlawful to carry a loaded handgun in Maryland without a permit, but to get a permit, you have to convince the state you have good and substantial reason to carry a gun. And apparently, because I want to live is not sufficient. States like this are referred to as may issue because there is theoretically a permitting system, but in practice, it is mostly just used to issue permits to the people who protect the privileged elites and their money. May issue policies are a holdout of the Jim Crow era, and while they may not be explicitly used to deny people of color their rights anymore, laws like this do continue to have a disproportionate effect on the poor. Gun control laws are racist policies designed by racists in a racist time to produce racist outcomes, and just because the people administering them are mostly not racists anymore doesn't mean the laws stopped producing racist outcomes. All gun control is racist. Can I get an amen? FPC President Brandon Combs said, "The right to bear arms is not a second-class right nor a mere privilege that only some lucky people are granted by the government on a case-by-case basis. It is constitutionally and morally offensive for the Maryland government to criminalize the exercise of this fundamental human right. The Constitution itself provides the only justification necessary for law-abiding adults to exercise their fundamental individual right to bear arms in public."
So say we all.
Obviously, arbitrary and discretionary permits are a gross violation of the individual right to bear arms protected by the Second Amendment and the Due Process and Equal Protection Clauses of the 14th Amendment. Smart people like our viewers know any permitting system undermines the power of the individual right to be armed. It is fundamentally wrong for the state to usurp our natural right and attempt to sell them back to us as a privilege.
Bad, 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 bad!
Even shall-issue states, where the state is required to issue the permit so long as requirements are met, are an affront to liberty. Can you imagine having to demonstrate proficiency, pay a fee, pass a background check, and get permission from the state to publish a blog or wear a rosary? But at least in the case of shall-issue permits, no self-important bureaucrat can arbitrarily decide whether to allow you to exercise your human right to self-determination. There are numerous ways these cases could play out, but the three main outcomes would be: A, nothing changes, but other authoritarian states are emboldened to place draconian restrictions on the permitting process. 2, the court finds discretionary permitting to be unconstitutional. Or lastly, the court finds requiring a permit at all to exercise a right is unconstitutional. That is, constitutional carry for Maryland. But regardless of how the United States District Court for the District of Maryland rules, the losing party will appeal the decision, and this case will likely play out over the course of a couple of years alongside the New Jersey and New York cases, with at least one of them ultimately arriving at the Supreme Court. That's going to take a lot of lawyering, and it takes money to keep a herd of lawyers fed and watered. So here we go again. Please go to saf.org or firearmspolicy.org and give generously.
You say that a lot.
I know it probably gets repetitive to hear me ask for donations every time I cover something these folks are doing, but I legitimately believe that is the most powerful thing I can do to support gun rights, so I'ma keep it up. These court battles are, in my opinion, far more important than stumping for weak sauce politicians who will only roll over and compromise our rights away once elected. Court precedent repeals unconstitutional laws and makes it harder to get new ones passed. Defense Distributed has been battling the U.S. State Department and the New Jersey Attorney General Gerber Gruel for years. Basically, the State Department alleges publishing plans to make a gun on the internet is a violation of ITAR because it is exporting military information. Anyone who isn't a mouth-breathing window licker who wears pants on their head knows the First Amendment to the United States Constitution is the supreme law of the land, and no law, policy, declaration, or wishful thinking can take precedence over it. Not even the New Jersey law, which makes it illegal to publish plans to make guns. But for years, the State Department has been flip-flopping on its position, and the New Jersey Attorney General has been trying to dodge Defense Distributed in court after sending a cease and desist letter. Defense Distributed is located in Texas, so I'm not even sure how they can violate New Jersey law from over there, but when they tried to sue the New Jersey AG in federal court in Texas for violating their First and Second Amendment rights, he tried to claim that was the wrong jurisdiction. It's complicated, and I don't want to waste your time wading through the back and forth that has taken place over the last few years. But if your desire to know more is intensifying, just Google up some articles on Defense Distributed, New Jersey, and the State Department. While you're at it, take a gander at the Wikipedia article titled Illegal Number. That'll blow your mind, and it really makes you think about what constitutes speech and how speech can be restricted.
But that's not important right now.
After slogging through mountains of BS, the Second Amendment Foundation and Defense Distributed have filed an 89-page suit in the United States District Court for the Western District of Texas, Austin Division, against both Gruel and Secretary of State Mike Pompeo. On the one hand, the outcome of this case is unlikely to have any substantive impact on the availability of gun-related files on the interwebs. You can't stop the signal, so once a file gets shared, it is virtually impossible to cleanse it from the whole-ass internet. And that simple fact renders any law regarding home-manufactured firearms basically moot, but that doesn't make it legal to suppress speech. Just because I can get around the law and find what I need anyway doesn't make the law constitutional. More than that, I believe the ability to legally distribute these files will be pivotal to the ability of people in tyrannical states such as China and Californistan to arm themselves against oppressive regimes. So we'll be watching this case closely. I already encouraged you to donate to the SAF today, but if you'd like to help Defense Distributed more directly, please go to defdist.org and click Join the Fight. Do minors have constitutional rights? In a manner of speaking, no. Legally, minors aren't fully persons yet, and what rights they have are delegated to their parents. In a legal sense, minors are almost like their parents' property. So when you talk about First Amendment rights of a minor, you're legally speaking about the First Amendment rights of the parent by proxy. Kind of, sort of. Minors have some other rights, though, such as equal protection under the law. And all of that matters because we allowed this idea to creep into public schools that children don't really have any First or Fourth Amendment rights, and that's just not true. They do. Kind of. Sort of. I mean, I'm not a lawyer because my heart is pure, so I'm fuzzy on all of this. But as I understand it, minors do enjoy some constitutional rights, but courts have allowed government agencies such as schools more latitude in restricting speech than they would for adults. And a suit filed in Wisconsin is poised to more clearly define the limits of those rights. Shattuck Middle School and Kettle Moraine High School disciplined students for wearing these shirts and argued they can do so not because the shirts were disruptive or too orange, but because, get this, The political message wasn't specific enough. That's right. The school has the audacity to claim the First Amendment only protects speech if it conveys a particularized message. Judge William C. Griesbach found that argument to be ridiculous and allowed the suit to proceed. I'm excited to see how this one plays out. Oligarch, would-be tyrant, and known Combine sympathizer Mikey Bloomberg spent $2 million through his puppet organization Everytown trying to subvert the will of the people in Montana in order to stop a state preemption referendum from passing. Many states have a law that basically says counties and municipalities are not allowed to pass more restrictive gun laws than the state. Montana already had a state preemption law, but there were a couple of cracks in the existing law which the ballot referendum was designed to fill. Montana Governor Steve Bollocks vetoed an identical law last year, but voters approved the law on Election Day. So even though Bloomberg spent 27 times what the NRA spent on this issue, he still lost. And in my book, that deserves a hearty laugh. All told, even with Mikey's attempt at buying the election, it isn't really all that surprising a pro-gun ballot item passed in Montana. What might raise an eyebrow, though, is the Illinois ballot proposition, which isn't so much a law as written notice from the people of the land of Lincoln to their elected representatives, instructing them to protect a citizen's right to keep and bear arms as defined by the Second Amendment of the United States Constitution. That proposition passed by an astounding 85%. I demand the highest of fives for that one. The winner of last week's t-shirt is this comment from Bruce Gilder. TNVC provides low-carb, healthy, non-GMO night vision devices like Mama used to make, but unfortunately it's election season and they have all been harvested. The only products left are from inferior corporate farms, so I thought I was out of luck, and with all the power outages in California, I thought I would never be able to see after dark again. And one day in a pawn shop, my luck took a turn for the better. The owner was dusting off old inventory when he found what looked to be a PVS 14. When I inquired about it, I was told it came from a corporate farm and only had a price tag of $10. He let me examine it in a dark room, and even with a fresh battery and an additional IR illuminator, I could barely make out my hand in front of my face. I told the old man I'd buy that for $1, and he agreed just to get rid of it. But that wasn't the end of the story. Oh no, that was not the end. I shipped my inferior corporate farm-grown night vision device to TNVC, where Sam had a hard look at it. He called me and said it was worthless, but I'd buy that for $1 just to help me out. I turned down his generous offer and asked if possibly it could be used for seed or healed. Sam thought long and hard about the challenge before him. Ultimately, he was able to gut my $1 corporate farm night vision device, and with the proper application of fertilizer, hydroponics, tender loving care, and arcane knowledge, he was able to grow a reasonable facsimile of a real TNVC product, for which I was overjoyed. But alas, by the time the project was finished, the commies had been voted out from California and the power was flowing at night again, so I never had a need for my regenerated night vision. I had a garage sale and priced it at a fair $1,500 just to get a little of my money back. The neighbor kids came over and one said to the other, "I'd buy that for $1." No, you won't, I said. So to this day, it sits on my nightstand waiting to be used if the commies ever get in control again. Now, there were lots of other really well-written submissions, but this one mentions our sponsor, and I'm a filthy capitalist, fight me. If you'd like to win your choice of rad shirt from our Teespring store, post a comment containing the phrase, "I swear by my pretty floral bonnet" in the YouTube comments, and I will arbitrarily and unilaterally choose the best one. Keep it PG, and I might even read it in the next episode. Well, friends, that's all I have for you today. I hope you enjoy watching these things because I sure enjoy making them for you. If you want to help us keep bringing you banger content like this, please support the folks who support us. Not only does TNVC.com carry a wide selection of low-carb, fat-free, non-GMO night vision products, they also have mounts, lights, and all sorts of other gear to make you the bump in the night. And if you want to support us more directly, you can get fly shirts like this one in our Teespring store. I love you. Beer break. I feel like I do better when I got a couple in me. If you think... Yummy.